We now continue with Smurf.
I just want to preface this story by saying I do not drink. I have never done any drugs in my entire life, and I do not smoke anything. What I'm about to tell you sounds unbelievable, and I can barely believe it myself. Basically, I am a road maintenance worker, but I work for a company and am a private contractor, rather than being employed directly by the government. This happened to me around 5 to 6 months ago, when I was working on a contract in Massachusetts on a pretty desolate stretch of highway. There is this 16-mile stretch that runs between Beckett, Massachusetts, and Bethany, New York, that is pretty isolated by all accounts, and does not really see all that many people. So, it was a surprise to us when our company was contacted about laying down some new asphalt because a ton of potholes and other bits of damage had popped up on the road quite recently. They said that the potholes were becoming more like craters rather than little bits of damage here and there. The government is notorious for letting even the most in need roads turn into crap, even if they're used by tons of people. We didn't really get a reason why this one was such a priority, but it's not like my boss was going to turn down some easy work. Plus, with it being so isolated, we had free rein to goof off a little and extend the time it would take and earn a little bit more money. The part we needed to fix was not that big. Most of the damage was contained in a relatively small area, and so it was an easy enough job. I think we stretched the work out to around a week before people were on our case, so the boss wanted us to do overtime. This is something I was more than fine with. I get a call one night after I had crashed. I was working earlier in the day after working the night prior, and so was just resting up a little bit. It was my boss calling me. He told me that he needed me to come in desperately tonight, as one of my coworkers had just lost his mind, apparently. Those are the exact words he said to me. I asked him if the dude was okay, and he says he's pretty sure he turned up to work on something. My boss told me he was really jumpy, and started talking about seeing the asphalt bulging and moving. I think he also said he felt something grab his ankle. The dude's face was super pale, and his eyes were massive, so the boss thought shrooms or weed and sent him home. The boss told him it was his only warning, and if he does that shit again on an important job, he is done. I really did not want to get out of bed, but he offered to make it worth my while, and I honestly really could not refuse. I drove out there on the double, and my boss gave me a quick rundown on what needed to be finished up. He said he and a couple of other workers were going to take a quick 15-minute break while me and another guy got to it. I went over to greet my coworker, Joe, and he seemed pretty skittish. I called his name and patted him on the back, and he jumped in fright. I asked what had gotten into him, but he would really not say. He just pointed at one of the potholes that seemed to have some kind of gas steaming up from it. It smelled horrible. I assumed it was to do with sewage or some shit. Maybe some messed up drainage or some other kind of problem. Maybe somebody dumped something down there. I am not kidding when I tell you he grabbed me by the shoulders, looked me directly in the eyes, and told me with a stone-straight face that they finished patching that hole just yesterday. He told me that it was fully finished and that he himself had done the job. I just kinda gave him a blank stare and was like, okay. You doing alright, man? He just said whatever and said that we should get on with it. I don't know what it was, but after he told me that, I started to get this itchy feeling. Nothing on my body was actually itchy, but I could feel it on the back of my neck, and it would not go away, no matter how much I tried to scratch it. I wondered if it had something to do with the putrid smell. About 20 minutes went by, and those assholes were still on break, so I told Joe I was gonna ask them if they were gonna do any work at all tonight. Joe told me okay. The second I turned around, I was confused as hell. The section of the road where we had patched, it was now inflated. Literally like a massive bubble, like someone had blown up some bubble gum, but it's entirely asphalt. Not fresh asphalt either. This is fully set and cured asphalt, being inflated like a balloon. I took one step closer and could see it pushing up and down like someone was breathing air into it and then sucking it back up. Eventually, it recessed completely back into the earth to ground level, and I could see steam starting to rise from it, just like the other hole. I got down to the ground, on my hands and knees, and put my ears up close to it. Honestly, I don't even know what I was thinking or what was going through my head in that moment. It's quite possibly the weirdest thing I could have ever done, and I probably looked like a freak, trying to listen to the ground. I could hear something though. If I focused really hard and blocked out the ambient sounds of the wind and birds and my coworkers who were still shirking their work, I swore I could hear some kind of gasping for breath. It was low and filled with mucus and sounded really wet. And then I instantly pulled my head away as I saw the ground starting to rise again. It did not inflate like a balloon this time. I could see a shape starting to form as the asphalt rose. I could see, and I know how this is gonna sound. It's gonna sound like I was on drugs too, but I saw fingers starting to take shape in the asphalt. Again, this was not fresh asphalt. This should not be possible in the first place, but it looked like when you put your hands into a kind of mold or a Play-Doh or something. The ground rose up, and I can see these finger shapes, 4 distinct fingers, and they looked really wide and stubby. They stretched the ground to the point that it looked like it would split open, like when you have stringy cheese or something, and you pull it really far until it's white, and it is about to break. That is what the ground looked like to me. The ground eventually went back down as the fingers pulled away, but it only took seconds before it rose up again, with another shape starting to form. Not fingers this time, something big and round, what looked like a head. A distinct head shape was now stretching the asphalt to its limit. I was basically on my ass at this point and crawling away backwards. I started to call out to Joe, but he was not answering me. I watched the shape of the head become more and more visible, coming further and further out of the ground until pop. The ground made this wet and squelchy sound as it popped and this thing emerged from the ground. It happened so incredibly quickly. I screamed for Joe, for my boss. I probably sounded like a little girl. I could not hear any of my coworkers talking or laughing anymore, but I did hear Joe scream too. These next events all happened in a flash. I turned my head around, caught a brief glimpse of Joe for maybe half a second or a second. I saw him looking down, with something wrapped around his ankle. In that second that I was looking away, I heard those same squelching sounds and flicked my eyes back around to see this thing scuttling along the floor on all fours. The head was massive, probably bigger than the average human head, but the rest of the body was all like smushed together and compact. The space between its head and torso was minimal, and all of its limbs were pressed up against its chest when it ran. It didn't look incredibly strong, and it could not have been taller or bigger than your average dog. The face did not have any kind of eyes, but it did have these holes in the sides of its head that were quite large. They were like stacks of circles that went into the head. It's hard to explain because I only had a brief glimpse when it ran towards me, and another restricted view when it eventually fled. The thing was immediately upon me and grasped its claws or hands or whatever around my ankle, and I don't even know how to describe the sensation. My ankle became numb or weightless is how I would describe it all at once. Not numb because I could still feel every sensation, but all of the skin felt like it sagged and became weaker. It clamped around me. I felt this sensation, and instead of a snap, there was a distinct pop, and I screamed louder than I ever have before in my life. The pain was like a bright hot white kind of pain, and I saw that nothing had snapped. This thing had almost phased through the limb. It put its claw or hand or whatever right through my ankle. There was no blood and nothing coming out of it, but my ankle had been passed through like jelly. It got really close to me, sniffed me, let out this horrible sound that made my ears ring, and then pulled out its claw, which just hurt just as much on the way in. I watched it scuttle away backwards incredibly quickly, watching me the entire way, before it eventually turned and ran along the road. My truck was in the way. I can't even describe what the hell happened. It just ran through my truck. Just like it had stretched the asphalt, the thing ran into my truck, through where the wheel was, and the wheel and the rim just stretched and eventually gave way to this thing as it just ran right through it. It looked like it took almost no effort at all. I just sat there with my mouth hanging open as I looked at the giant hole in my wheel. After the thing fled, my boss and my coworkers finally ran out, asked me if I was okay, and then called an ambulance for me. I asked them if they saw what happened and what the hell was going on. My boss told me he had no idea what I was talking about, that he just heard me scream and saw me injured. I had a fucking hole in my ankle. He looked shaken up and scared, but for some reason, he had no idea what I was talking about, that he just heard me scream and saw me injured. And for some weird reason, he didn't even look like he was lying. Maybe he just couldn't process it, and his mind blanked it. The doctor, when I got there, had no idea what to say to me. There really wasn't any quantifiable wound. There was no actual damage to my leg. It's like everything that existed in the place that the creature punctured just became void and disappeared from reality. All the insides had been liquefied or jellified and did not work anymore. They informed me that amputation was needed in order to stop any kind of damage or infection from spreading to the rest of my leg as a result of the gaping wound. So, yeah, there goes my employment. Now I get the honor of leeching off of the government, so you can imagine I am fucking thrilled. I managed to talk to Joe. He saw something similar, only he did not get off lightly either. Thing came out arm first, grabbed his ankle, turned it into mush, messed his shit up instantly. It tried to pull him under first, before eventually turning his entire foot into goop and leaving a puddle of it all over the highway. No bleeding or trauma to any other parts of his body. Everything else was sealed over with skin, like it had been amputated and healed over. He could not give me any answers either, which is why I'm here. We lost the contract immediately. Government sent another team of contractors and sealed that stretch off for a week or two. We could not even get close. No news articles about it, not even a pissed off guy online. That's the last any of us heard about it, until the route was opened back up with fresh asphalt and a new paint job. I want to know what I witnessed and why I got my life ruined for no reason. I just want to know something, anything at all. I am begging you. I was born and raised in the hills of southern Middle Tennessee. The family farm is well upwards of 500 acres and made up of mostly thick woods. In an area as sparsely populated as this, the people have names for the oddities that are unexplainable even by their knowledge of the land, flora, and fauna. One of these oddities is known as the Ello Man. Its name is only something that is discussed rarely when trying to discover the reason behind an abnormal livestock death or odd finding in the woods. This story revolves around my interaction with the Ello Man. Be 15-year-old me. It was late November, which is deer hunting rifle season, so I had decided to go hunting that day. In the morning, I had absolutely no luck, so I decided I would give it another go that afternoon, which is something I rarely do. To make this an even more rare occurrence, I decided to hunt in the holler behind my grandparents' house. No one ever went back there. It would quite honestly be accurate to say that the parts of the woods I was in more than likely had not seen a human in decades. I went plenty early, so that I could set up my blind in a nice thicket that I found that was right on an intersection of a game trail I found in a quiet little spring. I got settled in, and the hours slowly went by as I intently listened for the sounds of my quarry approaching and watched the little birds flit about. Their song and dance is an oddly reassuring stalwart when spending hours in the woods by oneself. Since I had entered the woods, I had felt a slowly mounting tension, but I was not sure why that was. After the sun had begun to set, I finally realized what was bothering me, what was off. The entire half-mile trek, I had not seen or spooked a single deer, turkey, rabbit, fox, or anything else on the ground. Besides the well-worn game trail that I found, there had not been any signs of habitation besides in the trees and sky. By this point, It had already started getting considerably dark as the sun quickly hid behind the hills. I noticed a terrible mistake of mine at this point too. As I usually hunt in the morning, and at stands I am intimately familiar with, I never carry a light with me. That was now a major problem. I have a good sense of direction, but walking around through the pitch black woods is less than desirable. I got out of the blind ready to pack it up when suddenly, as if someone had clicked the mute button on a remote, everything in the woods went dead silent. This caused me to pause. It seemed as if the woods were solemnly waiting for something to happen. The few moments struck by like hours, and then it happened. From back in a holler adjacent to me, probably about a mile away, I heard something wailing. It sounded almost like a small child or woman. I quickly grabbed my rifle, readying myself to head in that direction to see what was amiss when I heard that sound again. Only this time it was much closer. My blood ran cold. All the hair on my body stood on end. You always hear about fight or flight, but until you experience it firsthand, you have no clue what it's like. There was no decision for me to be made. Fuck the blind. I was out of there. I started running toward my grandparents' house as I listened to that thing quickly gaining ground on me. I swore that in the wailing, I could almost make out the words, but it was far too animalistic. By the time I was finally making it near the fence close to my grandparents' house, I could hear its panting and the sound of its feet pounding the ground. I could see the fence. It was only a few feet away. Past that, I could see the warm lights of their house, but I knew that there was no way I could make it there in time. I thought that I might die here, mere feet away from safety. As a final act of desperation, I threw my rifle behind my back and dove over the fence. I was immediately bathed in the light of the backyard floodlights. Just behind the fence, I heard it stop, still in the woods, still in the darkness. I was never able to clearly see it, but I could tell that it just sat there, analyzing me, before turning back around and heading back into the holler. Shortly after, my grandparents came outside to find me lying on the yard, panting, and helped me into the house. When I told them what happened, they were not the least bit skeptical. With grim faces, they said that it was surely the Ello Man. I have other stories from the farm that involve the Ello Man and other mysterious happenings if anyone is interested. In this next one, I was 10 years old at the time. That afternoon, my cousins and I had gone to town with my grandfather. For the life of me, I cannot remember what we were doing in town, but it took quite a while, and we were not headed back home till it was pitch black outside. In the battle royale to determine who would get the ever-elusive position of riding shotgun on the way back, I was the victor. Side note, but why the hell is riding in the front passenger seat called riding shotgun? Our property surrounds on both sides about 1.5 to 2 miles of highway. Right before one gets into the stretch of road where our land is, there is a sharp turn in the highway. Now would probably be a good time to mention that we do not exactly have any neighbors, unless you count the houses that are roughly a mile away from each side of our property via the highway. That night, as we were coming around the curve, I was in the middle of taunting my cousins from my seat when I heard my grandfather gasp. I quickly turned around to see what was going on, and I managed to catch a parting glimpse of what had so disturbed him. The lights had already gone off, so I could not make out any details, but something was stepping out of the woods on the edge of the road. Very spooked, I looked to my grandfather for some kind of reassurance that my eyes in the dark had only tricked me. His face was deathly pale. He was absolutely terrified by what he had just saw. The only time he ever said anything about what happened or what it was he saw was as soon as we got home. He simply stated that it was the Ello Man. I don't know if the Ello Man is a bad omen as well, or if it was just happenstance, but a few weeks later, my grandfather was the only witness to my dad's death in a farm accident. The only people who remotely saw the thing were my grandfather and I. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. I am happy to share these stories anon. Next story takes place when I was 11 years old, and this only indirectly involved me. This one probably is not related to the Ello Man, though it certainly could be. This event happened about 2 weeks before Christmas. My grandparents. They have to put the finishing touches on their Christmas shopping, as well as run some errands, so they left their house basically all day. Their house is an old plantation-style home that has been in the family for a very long time and is centrally located on the farm. Due to its central location, my grandparents oftentimes left the back doors unlocked so that us family members could stop in while working if we needed to grab a tool, warm up or cool down, or grab something to eat. When they got back from their excursion, night had fallen on the farm. As they walked up to the back door to enter the house, they noticed that the door was sitting slightly ajar. Thinking one of us kids had just forgotten to close it properly during the day, they entered the house without even a second thought. That is when this story changes though. As soon as they enter, they can just feel that something is off. That being the case, they called the rest of the family to see who had come to the house. No one had been to the house that day. Now, rather unsettled, my grandmother decided that she would check the house to make sure that nothing was out of place or stolen. As she went room to room, she did not see anything that was out of place. With only one room left in the house to check, she made her way to the front guest bedroom. This bedroom is not a place that I like. It has heavy curtains draped down by all the windows that keeps the room in a perpetual state of darkness. When you add to that the creepy ass antique dolls that line the walls, you have one creepy ass room on your hands. To top it off though, the only source of light in the room is a single light in the middle of the room that has a pull string. Screw this room. As my grandmother made her way into the room, that feeling of unease was replaced with something far sinister. That feeling that I'm sure a mouse feels before being struck by an owl. The feeling of predation. She could tell that something in that room was watching her, waiting for her to distance herself from the entrance of the room to turn on the light. She froze at the entrance. Quickly and quietly, she grabbed my grandfather, and they retreated to their bedroom and locked the door. They prayed to make it through the night unscathed. The next morning, the house felt alright again, and my grandmother laughed off those feelings as just paranoia. Fast forward 1 week, the week before Christmas. Grandmother is cleaning the house, as their house is where we celebrate our family Christmas. She goes through the house tidying everything, and as she is finishing, ends up at the same room as before. She starts vacuuming the room, and then decides to start vacuuming behind the curtains. When she starts behind the curtains that are right beside the entrance to the room, her blood freezes and terror sets in. Behind the curtain, someone or something had cleared out a space to stand in. In the heavy carpet, there were marks from where it had stood motionless for hours. Whatever it was mere inches away from her, watching her, waiting for her to enter the room. That Christmas, due to it being the first one since my dad died, and some odd things happening at my house, we spent the night at my grandparents' house Christmas Eve night. That is the night when my grandmother told us what happened. It's not like I wanted to sleep that night anyway. Here is some background on my house. The house I lived in as a kid was rather old itself, dating back to when my great-grandparents had first bought our land. What many people did not know though, is that a similar house had stood at that exact spot, but had been burned down in the mid-1800s. It's said that the fire was started by the owner's daughter, who was not all there mentally. The girl and her baby brother died in the fire. When I was first told about this, I thought it was just my family screwing with me. But one day, while digging around the house, I started noticing shards of glass, dilapidated roofing tiles, rusty nails, rotted away wood fragments, and some whole items like old milk bottles and the likes. There was mostly a house that had burned down where mine now stood. I am sure you know where I am going with this. My house was haunted. My older brother, younger sister, and I all slept in the upstairs. Something else we shared was an intense fear of the upstairs storage closet. Every nightmare we had as children revolved around either something terrible coming from there or happening inside of that closet's four walls. In an old house, it seemed even older and just exuded an oppressive feeling. No matter how bright that light that was shown in there, it still felt dark. This closet was right beside the stairs that led to the first floor. This fact becomes important later. First story regarding my house follows this post. One night, I am about 7 years old the time this happened. I sleep on the top bunk of a bunk bed with my brother. Very late at night, I wake up to the sound of the closet door creaking open. In my sleepy state, I wonder why someone was up and about at that time. I look over the side of the bed and see a very young girl walking up to our bed. I can't see well because it's dark, but it must be little sister. I call out to her, asking why she is up at this time of night, telling her that she will get in trouble, etc. The girl looks up at me. I hear my little sister cough in her adjacent room. That is not my sister. No. She is now right beside the bed and reaches out her arms for my brother's head. When I see this, I have had enough and throw my pillow at it and then pull the covers over my head and just hope that it will go away. I am not sure how or when, but I managed to fall back to sleep. In the morning, I wake up thinking about the vivid dream I had the night before. That is until I saw the pillow on my floor where I threw it. This next story does not involve me at all. It takes place months after my dad had died, when weird things had started happening more frequently in the house. Be my mom at the house by herself, since my sister and I are at school. She is standing in the bathroom doing some cleaning and talking on the phone to her friend from work. The bathroom is right at the foot of the steps in the house. While talking, she hears something that sounds like the upstairs storage closet creaking open, followed by a brief silence. Then all hell broke loose. It sounded like someone had thrown pots and then themselves down the stairs, crashing down. On the other side of the line, her friend asked what the hell that sound was and if my mom was okay. When my mom looked out at the base of the stairs, nothing was there. She looked throughout the entire house and nothing was out of place. That being the first time my mom had experienced firsthand the weirder side of our house, it was not surprising when we moved away a couple of months later. That story does not end there though. After we moved out, my grandparents started renting the house. Years went by and tenants came and went. When I was 18, I was at my grandmother's and we started talking about the last tenants to move out. She told me that they told her about something strange that kept happening at the house at the dead of night. That was the main reason they were moving on. Sometimes at the deepest point of the night, everyone in the house would be awoken to the sound of the closet creaking and something crashing down the stairs. My mom, her friend, and I were the only ones that had known about my mom's experience. This happened to me when I was around 20 years old. It's the middle of July. It's probably around 3 p.m. My BFF comes over with a blunt of brown sugar. This gonna be good. Standing in the backyard, burning said blunt. There is a full moon shining bright in broad daylight. A flock of 50+ seagulls appear out of nowhere. You see this shit? The blunt burns to nothing without another hit being taken. We realize it's not a flock of seagulls, but otherworldly crafts. Crafts flying in and out of existence in a contained space in the sky. The formation floats to the north, then the formation floats to the south. The entire time, there is a fluctuation in the amount of crafts. Then there was one. The craft floats across the sky, headed north. Then there were two. Number 2 is tailing behind number 1. And then there were 3. Number 3 is closely following number 2. This continued on in the sky until they were all out of sight. That's the weirdest shit I've ever experienced in my life.